much for coming. I am Ricky Monique. I'm going to be moderating today along with Julia. Will you be helping too, jumping in, or you'll just be kind of chilling?
Can help out wherever it's needed. Absolutely.
Cool. Jessica, owner of Minnesota Black Box, recently reached out to me and organized all of this. So I want to thank them and start off by thanking them and also thank the people at Flow and just for having this in WBC. Like, this is just an amazing platform. I'm really excited. And I'm also happy that today we get to focus on nonprofits and kind of start the week off within that space. So to start off, again, I'm Ricky Monique. I'm co-founder and creative director of Tangible Collective. I am a host, educator, musician, again, creative director, and amongst many different things here in Minneapolis. And I, again, will be moderating and holding this space. And so I wanted to start off by kind of introducing our panelists. I know that Deanna is not she's not in here today, or right now, so I'll just kind of like introduce who she is, but when she joins, then I'll let her kind of go ahead and give herself an introduction. Deanna is the founder of DAC Lifestyles, which is a nonprofit organization that centers providing or bridging a gap and providing space for youth and opportunities for youth to engage in different activities and opportunities in that might be, different from what they're used to. And it's also a space for access. So she does a lot of work with providing access to opportunities and resources that youth in specific spaces might need. And our second panelist is Zania Coleman, who is co-founder and executive director of Tangible Collective. Zania is amazing, just overall artist and organizer amongst different things. So I would love to kind of give this space to Z to just introduce herself, talk a little bit about her work, because I know she's a lot more than just the co-founder of Tangible Collective, and I like to let her to put language to what she does. And then I'd also like Z for you to say how long you've been doing this work.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you to the amazing host. Really good to see you again, Julia, also. And of course, we love Jessica and we love Black Box and Flow and all the West Broadway Coalition. So definitely excited to be here and happy to be in the space. So for me, let me make sure my phone is silenced before I start. For me, how long have I been doing the work? So I call myself like a community kid. I grew up in different community circles and many different community pockets, but a lot of them are art related, always, whether that was theater with my aunt Thomasina, or that was like theater also with my aunt Janata. Like, I just grew up around the space and like intentional spaces for Black folks as well. I was raised in a Kefren, which was like a small Afrocentric community in, I think at the time it was over South. But so like those type of community structures definitely like influence the work that I do. And I would say I'm like a mixture. I do textile work, I do costume work, I do digital work. Primarily I do video editing as a freelancer. I also work at SPNN in St. Paul, and I lead some of our advanced documentary programs there. I have a large background in like oral history, and then I think a lot of it kind of ties into like cultural curation, where it's just like making spaces like for Blackness to be explored, developed, tapped into, whether that's traditional practices or evolving practices of culture. I just like all my work to kind of be centered around that. And so I think technically, I guess I would say 5 years in total. I'm not counting out too much of college for sure, but I would say definitely 5 years as a professional. So yeah, that's what I would say for that.
Awesome. And I see you kind of already answered a little bit of my first question, but just to get more specific, I'd love to hear either a first or early memory of being in community that may have influenced the way that you go about holding space now.
Mm-hmm. My first memory. Oh, I guess I'll start. Like, it's not necessarily like a first. I don't know. Do I have a first? I think. Oh, one thing I remember when I was younger, I think I had to have been at least like five. I think it was like 5 or 4. And my aunt used to sing at this jazz club downtown called Jasmine's, and I just remember like in my free time, I don't listen to jazz, but I love my aunt. So I listen to her sing jazz. And so that's kind of like our family practice is like we will listen to her sing jazz. And so we went to Jasmine's and I just remember her in her knee-high boots and like velvet dresses and like big hair. And I remember sitting at this huge high top with my feet dangling. And I would love Jasmine's because they had this smothered chicken meal with mashed potatoes at the restaurant. And like, I was like, we get to go see Auntie and I get to go eat this chicken. But I remember just like the amount of people that like regularly came through and like how you begin to know people, recognize people, build out a space, build out an energy based off of just being consistent with something. I think she was there like once a week. And so it just became this thing of like, this day Thomasina's there, these people come through, different musicians would come through to play backup for her, whether that was like saxophone or piano, she had different accompaniment. And it was just like this thing to see consistently happen. And as long as it consistently happened, magic consistently happened. So it was just like, it was about just being present for that. Yeah, so I think that's kind of one thing I noticed early.
Awesome. Yeah, I think like when it comes specifically to Minneapolis and the artist scene or just space in general, like right, like even removing art from it, it's very hard to find consistent spaces for Black people to engage in whatever it is that they do. Right? That's not like structured. That's not like you have to be at this level to be here or whatever. It's like just show up and this is going to be here, right? Like we are starting to have a lot more of those and a lot of people are building those spaces, and that's why stuff like this is important, where it's a daily thing, right? Where it's like, I know at 11 every day this week I can show up in this Zoom and I know I'll get some information, or I'll be able to just sit and listen to Black folks talk, right? But it's very interesting that point you make about consistency, Zania, and how I even think about that Starbucks in Riverside that has that Brugger's connected to it, and how like you can go in there and there's just a bunch of folks, like it's the most different Starbucks compared to like, you know, a Starbucks in Edina or whatever, where it's like you go in there and it's dead fucking silent. But if you go into the Starbucks on Riverside, it's loud as hell. It's Black men who are there often, who know each other, who know they can go to that Starbucks, sit down, have a coffee and have conversation, right? And so just spaces like that, you know, for even Black women, like how often do we have spaces like that, which is exciting to see spaces like Reloaded, you know, being built where it's a space for Black women who are our age to engage, right? So I love that point about consistency. I wanted to ask you, so with being nonprofit Z in regards to tangible, I want to first ask, because I know there are some people who don't necessarily understand the differences between nonprofit and for-profit. So I want to ask, what are those differences? You know, and I also want to ask, what made you decide that what the organization that you're going to be a part of starting is going to be nonprofit versus making it for-profit?
Yeah. I will definitely give a caveat. I don't necessarily know the technical definitions of nonprofit and for-profit. I know how they work in my mind. A lot of things
I
work
didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you're good. A lot of things work different in my mind. And one thing I will say is, in my mind, I think of what's the capital of what you're doing? Like, what is the main premise? And so, like, I think for profit, the main premise is bringing in income. And for a nonprofit in my life, the main purpose is either holding community space, having community space, and profit is that's something that's thought of later, very later. um and it's also, and like that might not be like, I'm sure there are nonprofits that have similar for-profit structure with like creating income and generating revenue in that way, but that isn't something that I think I was interested in. And I think when we talk about accessibility, like I think recently a lot of buzzwords have been important to people, like accessibility, all the things. And so it's like, okay, cool. For me, when I think of accessibility, I literally think of like no boundaries. And I think one thing for Tangible is like we don't charge. We never really charge for admission. I think most of our programming, we have select programming that like we've experimented with for like other purposes, but the bulk of our community programs are, my bulk, I mean over 90% are free, no charge. And that's extremely intentional. And like we figure out money on the back end. We're like, okay, well, how do we pay people for the labor that came into the space, but how do we not tax community to participate? So yeah, that's kind of always been our model. And I think we work really hard and really intentionally to keep that. And it's not always easy to keep that, but I think as long as we're dedicated to it, it can continue to happen. So
Love that. Yeah, I mean, and I know like when we were first starting, it's like you were like, so should we start charging? I'm like, no, I don't want to charge. I'm like, let's figure it out. Like by let's, I mean you figure it out, Z. I know it's possible, Tania. You got it. Go crazy. So with that, with it being accessible, I know at first there was a lot of coming out of pocket that happened. There was a lot of, not seeing any return on that coming out of pocket. What ways have you found to supplement, that money? Like, in what ways have you found to make money if possible, to profit if you are profiting, or sustain a life if you are? If not, in what ways have you found to at least fund what you're doing to hold that space as a nonprofit org? And does that feel sustainable to you? And are you thinking of other options outside of what you're already doing right now?
yeah, I think when it came to Tangible and the format and like income, I will say personally, coming out of college, I knew I was not going to have a regular job. Like that wasn't in my future. So I was kind of already in this mode of like, how do we make it work? What is the thing? What am I going to do? What's going to happen? And for Tangible specifically, when you're in the space and like and I would say out of all the events we've hosted, I think we've only had a good handful, like literally a handful, that didn't feel the way we wanted them to feel. But outside of that, when you're in the moment and like it's turning out the way you want it, the vibe is right, people are there, it's so gratifying that like it's almost kind of like a drug where you're like, forget it, I'll make it work. Like I will make it work. And so I think for that, like when you love something in that way, it's not necessarily like it never really dawns on you. I think sometime in the process before you get to the thing, it's like, oh, I can't, how do I pay this bill? How do I pay that bill? How do we do the thing? But I definitely feel like there's been lots of intention, but a lot of it is just like covering. I always make this joke. I was like, I don't go to church, but I feel like enough Black women in my lineage have prayed for at some point me to be able to tap into that investment. So I definitely feel like prayers is a sort of investment. And it's like, as long as our intentions are good, we're consistent and we're making good quality work, we haven't not been able to do it well and do it in a way where like the community benefits. Now, as I've gotten older and more bills have occurred and like all the things that happen, buying cars, buying homes, paying bills, all the things that happen, you start to think like, is there an expiration on this magic? Like, how long can the magic be the thing that makes you want to have 80-hour weeks to compensate for the fact that you don't get paid for the 30 that you put into the thing? Like, you just don't get paid for it that way. And I think there are like multiple ways that I'm sure people have advice on like how to structure it differently, how to do the thing differently. It often includes more paperwork and those types of things. But yeah, I think it's like, and also I think that's one of the things about being young. When you're young, you can kind of like get on by like the hair on your chin. You're just like, I can pull it through, I can whatever. Like prior to needing insurance and all that good stuff, you can kind of like rough it a little bit. But it is something that I think is being thought about more now, I think, between myself and you. Just like, it's just like, you got to pay bills, you got to do the thing, you gotta have money to support yourself, you got to have those types of things. So I think for myself, I'm describing this period in my life now as a high productivity, low income time. I think I've been putting in enough work where it's like slowly starting to turn where the compensation for non-tangible work is increasing, so that I do have more capacity and more just stability to put more into the other work. It's not perfect. I don't think it's going to be perfect anytime soon, but I love the work. So it just winds up being a thing that's happening. So yeah.
And I was excited for Deanna to be here because I feel like she would have added another side to the conversation, just because for Z and I, like, we're artists. So for us, it's like we also really want to see a life or a world exist where we can practice our art forms in peace. And where we can like actually be able to just create, have time for creation, have time for conception, have time for all of those things, while also being able to like live, right? And be able to pay our bills and all of that. And I think Zania and I had a meeting with someone who doesn't like to be considered a mentor, but that has been in this work about 10 years longer than we have. And so she was talking to us about her organization, and she was saying to us that, you know, when you start off in the grant world, or when you start off in the nonprofit space, your first instinct, it goes to, hey, let's get all of our people salaried. Like, let's salary everyone. And she said to us, like, she was like, I realize now our goal no longer is to salary anyone. She's like, because everyone on our staff is an artist, including us, we no longer want to salary people. We no longer want people to be working 40-hour weeks. Now what we want is to be able to pay everyone to do stuff that will help the organization sustain and live and grow, while also having time for their creative practice. And that hit me and Zania different, because as artists, that's what we're looking to do, is like, neither one of us have ever wanted to work a 9-to-5. So why would we turn our organization into a 9-to-5 for us, or for anyone else who decides to work for or with us? And so with that, that's also something that we've been thinking about in the nonprofit space, is like, what does structure look like for us? And like, it constantly changes for us. Zinni, I want to ask you the question about failing, or, you know, messing up. And I know that you have a very interesting outlook on what, as a Black woman, like space to like to make the wrong decision. And I want to ask you, as a Black woman in this space, does it feel like you have space to grow? What does it look, and what do you think it could look like to make space for us as people who have our own organization, and as people who are just artists and just regular people, to, you know, mess up, or, you know, just have space in general?
Yeah. I would say, short answer, Do I feel like? No, I do not feel like. But I will say one thing. I think my mom, like a lot of the women in my life, I call them like rough around the edges women. Like they done been through some stuff, so they just a little rougher. That's all. It's a little rougher. And and even in that, I think I'm such a and I think like most older generations would reflect on our generation and be like, y'all are so anxious and so sensitive and all the things. I would say I'm definitely high anxiety and thought. Um, and I remember I used to panic about making the right decision. Like it has to be the right one. I can't make the wrong one. Like which one should I make? I'm almost like, if you make one, it's the wrong one, make another one. It happens to be your life, so you can do what you want to do with it. Just make another decision. And so it's like, there's some freedom in that. And then there's some acknowledgement of the fact that like, there really isn't wiggle room, I feel as a Black woman, to fail in that way. And so I think I've been very intentional on building a container that can hold that. And I feel like the consistency, the type of work, the reputation that me and Ricky have gained through tangible and just community accountability and like that type of environment has built up enough of a room kind of, and it's still being built, where that can happen. Like, and I don't feel like Black women get to fail in public. And so I think that's also something I think about a lot, as like public versus private space. And like, I kind of think of like, we recently participated in Art World, and we had a couple, like we had the closing day, we had a DJ come through and like make it feel like our type of space. And I was like, it's a private public party. Like it's a private public party. And there's like an invisible type of boundary that's being held. I think that's part of the intention around holding space that people don't necessarily see or always feel. But it's, why do I come here and I feel comfortable? Like that's intentional, and that's been worked at, and that's advocated for, and that's like fought for. And that's just what it is. And so I think like it's slowly being built. I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'll necessarily ever feel totally comfortable like failing in public. I overthink a lot to avoid that, because typically it winds up being a thing that like, and I've seen it happen multiple times, where when Black women do misstep, mess up, have whatever, it's not forgotten in the way it's forgotten for other people. And so it's, you don't escape it in that way. So I think idealistically, yes, we want a world where we can do things and be human and make errors. But in the world that we're in, it doesn't work that way. And so it's like, you have to be on your P's and Q's. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to be on top of it. And if you do need space to experiment and mess up, that has to be an intentional space. And I think individually Black women can decide whether that's public or private, and like how you build up that space for yourself. But I'm trying and intentionally trying to make tangible a safe enough space where artists can do the thing and we can give you funding, not anticipating it has to be perfect. The result has to be perfect. Like you're getting paid regardless. Like it's not like nothing you're doing is like, it's not contingent in that way. And we don't want art to feel like that. So yeah.
But since you're putting the time in, you know, you deserve some sort of compensation. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna move to a space that's a little more logistical. I want to ask what the process was like to get fiscally sponsored, and what made you decide to make Tangible be fiscally sponsored versus any other form of nonprofit or any others, you know.
Yeah. So I talked to quite a few people, and I do want to shout out resources like Springboard and Forecast, and like just like the local ecosystem of artists are always down to like talk, and like having artist mentors, and like Springboard actually offers consultations where you can just like talk through options and like what are the things. And so I think in terms of access, we needed some type of paperwork to get funding. So that's just what that was. And fiscal sponsorship allowed us kind of a safety net of low commitment, but more access. So I feel like I think we're at a point organizationally where we could change and go totally 501c3 and get our own. I don't necessarily want that responsibility. So we're totally fine being fiscally sponsored right now. It's and like specifically because both Ricky and I are young, and I think sometimes, even at least in my mind, I am like, okay, I'm doing this work, but like, do I want to be doing this work forever, like this specific work? And so it's like, it's been a 5-year project. It's been beautiful, and we're still going strong, and we still have other plans and things like that. But fiscal sponsorship allows us more flexibility to do other things, not have as much responsibility, and things like that. Yeah, so for that process, so I think through consultations at Springboard, shout out to Andy, we wound up going into a fiscal sponsorship. We've been there for, I think, at least since 2019. And then so there are some grants, very few, that don't require a fiscal sponsorship or a 501c3. However, most of them do require some type of accountability from that paperwork. And so that's kind of the thing that we're at right now. And I think moving forward, one of the conversations or one of the realizations that's happened when you start like applying for grants and getting more funding and realizing like, oh, $10,000 isn't as big as I thought it was. I never thought I'd get there, but we got there quick. When you start paying people, it goes away. And so it's like the 501c3, like, unless you make that leap or that transition, it's really hard to get operational funding or general operating funds that would pay you a part-time salary or a regular monthly salary or a regular monthly stipend or whatever that is, like that would grant you that access. So I feel like access to money comes with these like different types of like commitments that people need you to sign on the line for. And so it's like, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's like considering what does it mean and how do we get access to general operating funds, because we are doing work that is consistent and needs admin to be paid and staff to be paid without wanting the commitment of a full 501c3. So that's kind of at least our thought process with tangible around it. I think other people think of it differently for different things. So yeah.
Cool. And I know a question that a lot of people often ask is like, do you have a team? And like, if so, what does building that team look like for you? And, depending on the size of your team, like, do you want to expand your team? And what is the process of team building in general around tangible been like for you? See?
Mm-hmm. Team building. I feel like Tangible started very organic. So Tangible Collective was not originally. We started off as Tangible Thoughts. The open mic was Tangible Thoughts. The only function we had at the moment was going and getting speakers, having a space. Ricky was hosting, and we held an open mic. That was the only intention going in. That was the only like expectation. That was it. And once I saw the community, like the organic formation that was happening, like I don't know how to describe it. I hate the term go-getter because it sounds corny, but like I'm a Leo also, I'm a fire sign, so I burn a little hot. So when I have an idea, I just start. So it's just like, so at the time we just started, there was no foundation building. There was no like real intention put into the foundation. We just started. And I started applying for grants. I started like thinking about how to expand. Like, so there wasn't really that type of intention on the front end. And I will say, I think for both of us, we're at a point where like, now we know why it would be beneficial to build that type of foundation and that type of like intentional interaction. And I also think Ricky and I are in a very unique position because we're best friends and we're also co-founders. And so that's a thing that you're also developing as young women, young Black women in this space. You're also developing your own artistry, and then you have like this baby together. And so, yeah, I think there's like multiple layers to like what we have going on. And like we found something that works for us. And I think we're still working through the kinks and making it more formal and like having more intention around that foundation to support the work. Delegation is hard, especially when like I just think of it as like a spaghetti ball, and it's really hard to like explain or bring other people into that at this moment for us. But I will say one thing we've really appreciated. So we recently got into the Northwood King building, and we are often around and in space with public functionary. And to watch their growth and expansion in the way that they utilize team and like that word team is really inspiring. And then also I think for us finding mentorship around teams, duos, and other people in other capacities that have built that foundation or developing that is really important for us. So I think we definitely jumped some steps and like things formed organically. When things form organically, there's not a lot of formality. So I think we're just kind of at a place of like figuring out how do we integrate things that make the work more sustainable, including extra support. How does that look for us? So I think we're still figuring that out, but yeah.
Great. Easy. And I just want to be aware of the time. I know that we end in 10 minutes. And so I wanted to see if there was anyone who had wanted to ask any questions to Nia or me or Julia.
Yes, I mean, I could definitely ask, you know, how, I guess, like, in building a organization organically, how do you find time or space to make sure that you're still, kind of holding it all together? I don't know if I want to say you kind of answered it, but how do you kind of build those structures to just kind of make sure you're going on? Because I mean, I've been to Tangible Thoughts, and it goes, no one would ever know, that you guys are, it might be a whirlwind back there, but the events have been amazing and they grow each and every time. So like, how do you go back and, say, okay, this is where we're headed, or, how do you navigate that space? I hope that question makes sense. So.
Up to start answer and then Z can finish. I want to say to start, I think something that Z and I have been practicing in like the past, we talk about it like when we both get really busy, like it goes up in the air and then we have to like recenter. But we try to have two meetings a week, and it's not something that like we've like done the best. Again, we haven't done the best at it, but since we're together all the time because we're friends, it still happens organically that way, where we try to have a friendship meeting or like a relationship meeting, like how are we doing? And then we also try to have like a business, like what's going on with Tangible, what do we each need to do this week to keep us moving forward. And then also like having our calendars shared, not necessarily where it's like she knows my calendar and I know hers, but like the tangible calendar where we put both of our important dates on it separately, and then also like the stuff that Tangible has going on. And like we realized this summer, like so far in May and June, we really overbooked ourselves. And so like we are like going back to the drawing board with like intentionality wise, we did too much that was intentional these past 2 months that took a lot more work from us than we expected, on top of the stuff that we had going on separately that was a lot for us both too. So it's having meetings where we can reflect and say we're never doing that again, and these are the things that we can do to not ever do those things again. And then also too, it's again giving ourselves space to fuck up and being like, okay, like whatever. And like I think right now we have a lot of work that we've been doing that is different than what we're used to doing together. And so it's been like that kind of thing where it's like, okay, this is different. Let's learn from this. Like, let's go into this knowing that it's new, knowing that it's different, knowing that it's gonna stretch us. And then let's come out of it and say, okay, yes, this, no, that, right? So that's the side I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything. Yeah, I don't really have much else about. Yeah, I think the time. Yeah, we're still working on it. It's not perfect. Like, and I also feel like, also as artists, I think there's a couple mindsets we're slowly breaking out of. One, the starving artist concept. So it's like, how do we not feed into that, and how do we do the opposite of that? That takes some construction. And then also just the nature of our work and our life is very like ebb and flowy, at least for me. And I'm kind of a type A personality, unfortunately, for like my profession. And so like I've gotten way better at it. And I think getting older helps too, just like maturing and mellowing out. But like riding the wave and like finding what that looks like for you to ride the wave versus like trying to force things to happen. And that's definitely helped a lot with not having to take as much time to like always regroup and recenter. It's just like always being in a place that feels good, like trying to make all the places feel good. So yeah, that's all I would add.
That's great. Just diving in and kind of learning as you go is really kind of what I'm learning here, and I think that's great, honestly.
Nobody's doing it
We'll
wrong.
never really ever be ready, just gotta go and learn.
Yeah, and like people have come ask us for advice, and I'm like, it really is up to you. Like I can tell you what I did, but you're not doing it wrong. Like the best thing is to start doing the thing, because you can think about it forever. You can literally think about it forever.
Exactly. I was talking to Maya, I can't remember her last name, but she's like the director of like education at the Guthrie Theater. And she was telling me, like, she's from New York, and she's like, yeah, like coming to Minnesota has been very strange for me. And like learning how to like navigate the space here is very strange. She was like, I want to say one thing that is different between Minnesota and New York. She was like, is in New York, we don't we don't typically have like a 5-year plan or like everything planned out to the T. If we want to do something, we just do it, and the spaces open up for us. Like we just hey, we need this, we need to do that, we're gonna do that, blah 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 blah, and people are like, okay, cool. She was like, here in Minnesota, I noticed there's a lot of people with great ideas, but they don't pursue them because they think that they need all of these things in order to actually start doing them. And so I think for me and Zania, like as people, we would have never jumped into tangible the way that we did if we knew that like that it would grow into what it has grown into. Not to say that we wouldn't want to like do this work, but I'm saying that we would have probably tried to be more intentional at the beginning, which would have stopped us from building all of the relationships that we built and holding all of the spaces that we already have held. And so yeah, just that like concept of just starting sometimes actually is very like helpful, at least for me.
That's amazing. That resonates. It's real.
Yeah, so thank you for the question.
It's so important. I mean, I think this is a great time, a great space to have, regardless of, whether you're not too many people filled up the room. I still think that this will still reach many people, and as we share it through different channels. And I look forward to hosting more of these. I'm not, yeah, I think there's so much to be learned here, and I think it's just all an experience. And I think that's just the reality of being a Black person in these spaces, and knowing like you have your full-time job, you have all these other things, and you're still building community, and you're still building the future that you want to see. So it's just a beautiful thing to see, and I'm excited to see you guys grow, and it's been wonderful. So yes, that's all I can say. I don't know if there's anyone else in the room that wants to ask any questions. We do have like 3 minutes here, but yes, I am feeling good.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the space.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
I don't, excuse me, I don't specifically have a question. I just wanted to thank you all for sharing. I picked up I think some good information and a good way for me to look at assisting any nonprofits that call. I'm from the Small Business Administration, and of course, nonprofits are not our forte. So this was helpful information. Thank you.
Sweet. Anyone else want to make any comments? I could quick just speak on a funding opportunity that not WBC currently has. If you are a business or know a business that is on West Broadway, we do have the Restore North initiative where we are inviting businesses to apply for up to $25,000 or more if they can, just express their need and what it is that what we can provide for them to succeed. So feel free to reach out. It is on our website under Restore North, and it is open until the 17th. That application is open until the 17th. So we invite you to share that with all of your networks. I will go ahead and drop that link as well so you can see that. Otherwise, that is all from me. And yeah, I'll let you take it away, Ricky, if you had anything else. But just wanted to put that in there.
We just wanted to thank you all for coming. Again, we'll have another one of these amazing conversations tomorrow. That will be with more for-profit local Black businesses here in Minneapolis. So it'll be tomorrow at 11 a.m. We'll try to start on time tomorrow, if not 5 minutes after start. But yeah, again, just thank you for coming. And if you're interested in supporting Tangible Collective in any way, our Instagram is at Tangible Collective MN, at like Minnesota, but MN. And we also do have a Give MN profile where you can donate money to us. I'm actually in our studio right now where we need a little help on rent. So if y'all are interested in donating any funds, you can find us on Give MN, and you can just look up Tangible Collective and we'll be on there. We do sell t-shirts that are support Black women t-shirts, and Nia actually has one on right now. So if you'd like to purchase a t-shirt, that's also on our website, www.tangiblecollective.org. That's all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope that you all have an amazing